remake. In all my years in the gaming community, never have I ever encountered a word that sparks just as much territorial rage as it does fear into the keyboard of many a gamer.
Oh, hey, not a dog.
Oh shit, Jack and Daxter.
Dude, actually, hold up. I'm a little behind. God fucking damn it!
Last of Us.
Again? Is this Last of Us
Us
2? Are you serious, bro? What are we doing, Naughty Dog?
However, for me, it strikes me with a sense of curiosity and excitement because it puts games that came out before I had the sentience to understand that the joystick on a fight stick wasn't a pacifier, and games that I otherwise would have had no intention of ever playing right in my crosshairs. Silent Hill 2 is the second in the lineup of games that I never thought I'd play, but the remake actually got me to play. For anyone curious, the first of these was Final Fantasy VII, because as what I think might become the motto of my channel, I hate turn-based games. So when the remake was announced and I saw the new and dramatic shift of gameplay, I begged Square Enix to take my money. And then beyond all laws of logic, the remake got me to put aside my hatred for turn-based gameplay, and so I played the original game, and I'm honestly very happy that I did it, because I had a great time with it. However, with Final Fantasy VII, I knew a lot about it through cultural osmosis and Smash Bros. Also, I knew who Tifa was. Silent Hill is the complete opposite for me. Outside of knowing that it is indeed a video game, I knew literally one fact about the game series prior to the reveal trailer for Silent Hill 2 Remake, and the reason why that is very specific. I am bitch made. I came from and still live in Junior Weenie Hut Jr. I cannot handle anything remotely scary in a video game, movie, or TV series. You put me in a real-life scenario, and yeah, I'll be your brave boy, but you put me in front of a TV, and the second I hear that music kick in, I am locking all the doors in my house, grabbing my papoose gun and every available sword and knife in my house, and I don't sleep until dawn breaks and the demons go away. So yeah, all that to say, I am both a complete horror and Silent Hill virgin. I didn't even know Pyramid Head was from Silent Hill. I just thought he was from Dead by Daylight. But that's something I wear with pride, because that is the main perspective I will be approaching this video from. A look at the game through the eyes of someone with no idea what the original was like. So without further ado, let's dive right into the mystery of the literal worst vacation destination of Silent Hill.
So that's that. Let's double check all of these other rooms, because that looks very important. Nope. I'll go here. Jake, what are you doing? Why are we stuck? This is not okay! Alright, good angle, though. That's not what it seems. Sometimes you just have to look behind. What? Huh? Get down from there. No monkeying around. I see you. Bitch. Okay, gave me a flash. Oh, Jesus Christ. Nope, no. The light is off! I can't see! Fuck off!
The gameplay, while not my favorite aspect of Silent Hill 2 Remake, is shockingly great. I had one real expectation of the game going into it. When the trailer dropped, the first thing I noticed was the over-the-shoulder camera, along with scavenging and shooting. Immediately, two games came to my mind: The Last of Us 2 and Resident Evil 4. For me, this is like being stuck between a rock and a hard place, and when I realized the game was leaning more towards the hard place, I started begging for the rock. See, another reason why I have steered clear of most horror games is the fact that a lot of them have the game feel of a 7-car pileup. Game feel is something that often gets confused for control scheme, but what it really is the intangible and tactile sensation experienced when interacting with a video game. It's a feeling created by a combination of the actions you have access to, the animations that convey those actions, the amount of time those actions take to complete, the fluidity in which those actions can transition from one to the other, the feedback response from taking those actions, and a few other things that I can't put into words right now, but I feel like you get the gist. I believe game feel to be one of the most important things in a video game, especially a horror game. Most horror games, either intentionally or unintentionally, end up having a game feel that's like a puzzle in itself, and while that appeals to some, it's quite stinky to me. I want a game that can put me on edge through clever use and inversions of its mechanics, level design, and narrative design, while also making sure that I'm not fighting both the character and monsters to survive. And that is absolutely what I got with Silent Hill 2. Back when I was in band, it was kind of a rule of thumb that the slower pieces of music were always the more challenging to play because there's no hiding a mistake beneath a cacophony of sound like in the faster pieces. So, keeping time became one of the most stressful parts because even though you could have played a song over and over for 100 times, it's still so easy to lose your count and come in too early or too late, or to just play the wrong note. The same is true for game feel. If something is faster paced, it's a lot easier to make it feel smooth and fun. You can hide most of the jankiness behind the speed of the game, but when it's slower, you kinda have nothing to hide behind. Because Silent Hill 2 is a psychological horror, the gameplay itself is very slow and limiting in what actions you can perform as James. Moving too fast through the different levels would not only change the overall atmosphere of the game, but also change the way the puzzles and levels are designed. So it's really impressive that despite the slow pace of the gameplay, it manages to have an incredibly smooth game feel, not to mention a really solid pace. James really only has a few ways to move freely around the space. He can interact with very specific environmental hazards like vaulting through windows and squeezing through tight spaces. He can walk, and he can power walk. I refuse to call this a run because, we'll look at it. The limited movement speed and actions do work to the slight detriment of specific sequences, though. The Pyramid Head chase was a segment where I definitely felt the fear they wanted me to feel, but it could have been so much more if Bloober Team allowed me to haul as much ass as James does in the cutscene. However, I understand why they didn't, because giving the player access to a new form of movement for only a specific sequence could be both very jarring and frustrating for the rest of the game. It was kind of an unavoidable catch-22. But for the majority of the game, like literally 99.99% of it, the movement speed actively enhances the horror of the game. Knowing that any enemy can easily catch up to me if I made one wrong move heightened the tension of every encounter. The over-the-shoulder camera placement isn't just the remake taking a popular camera placement and using it because it's more mainstream and accessible than the original's fixed camera perspective. Placing the camera like this inherently offers both greater control to the player and immersion because you're just as up close and personal with the monsters as James is. It also gives you a closer view of James and his animations. The way he puts his whole being into his attacks as if he's fighting demons even worse than the ones in front of us is so visceral that it makes everything happening around you feel more real despite how surreal the setting is. It also ups the horror factor because James generally presents a pretty calm and collective presence throughout the story. So the raw emotion on display when James fights these monsters and stomps on their corpses clashes so hard with his overall presence that it will genuinely keep you on the edge of your seat because you're just waiting for this guy to finally snap. James is also usually the only constantly visible thing on screen at all times, and when you combine that with how long it actually takes him to turn around, it can lead to some real nail-biting moments. Knowing you have enemies hot on your tail that could catch up to you if you take a second to turn around really ups the bone-clenching fear factor felt in both the combat and scavenging. The game's combat is extremely simple and can honestly be boiled down to just dodge hit. You have a dodge button and this trusty 2x4 that you found along the way, and that's it for melee. For range, you have access to a pistol, shotgun, and rifle that can end most encounters with basic enemies pretty fast and safe, but they're also very useful for the boss fights, so using them to solve short-term problems could be detrimental to the long-term ones, if you don't manage your ammo well. I may have run into this problem. I was a little trigger happy.
He has a knife!
And then most enemies can actually resurrect themselves if you don't hit them while they're on the ground. These factors make the combat of Silent Hill 2 less a question of whether or not you can conquer the gauntlet of enemies in front of you, but more if you have the endurance to survive them. A key factor of this is that outside of the boss fights and tutorials, you do not have to fight a single enemy. Sneaking past enemies is as simple as moving slowly around the levels with an ear pressed up to the radio that alerts you to nearby enemies. Choosing to fight the enemies as I did is dangerous because you can't get comfortable. The pool of enemy types may be small, and their pool of attack patterns may be smaller, but that doesn't dull their lethality. Enemies can delay their attacks, they can power armor through your attacks, and they can interrupt your attacks if you get a little too trigger happy. This leads to the enemies having a certain annoyance factor that actually works in the game's favor to put you further into James's headspace. As I mentioned earlier, any slip up in your movement could result in an enemy getting their legs on you, and all of a sudden you are guzzling health drinks and panic dodging out of the way to survive. While the combat isn't anything to mechanically stress about, getting comfortable is a death sentence, so it's best to stay on your toes at all times. This is where scavenging comes in, and it's equally as simple. There's no inventory Tetris to play in Silent Hill 2, thank God, and if you pick up a health drink, syringe, or ammo box, it just goes to the bottomless inventory you have. Scavenging for supplies, while always a little annoying in any survival game, does help ramp up the fear and tension the player feels in this game because you truly don't know where you'll find your next health pickup or ammo box, so the further you go into the depths of the nightmare, the more you have to decide if you are going to fight or flee. And in some of the later areas of the game where health and ammo is a lot more sparse, it can get pretty nail-biting. Now, all of this simplicity could easily be screwed up if Silent Hill 2 didn't have as good of a game feel as it does. James, despite not being a combat god that can go toe-to-toe with these monsters, still controls incredibly well. Every action James takes, be it a melee attack, gunshot, or dodge, is responsive and fluid. The melee has strong tracking, but not too strong. The aiming is wobbly, but that wobbliness isn't excessive and only further showcases James's inexperience. The dodge actually covers a fair distance, but not too much. And I don't know what James did in high school, but this dude has some speed. There's also no jank or awkwardness when performing these actions back to back. And all of this goes into delivering an experience that is able to build tension without the need to make me fight the controls. The boss fights are pretty great showcases of this because despite you being pretty powerful, they still see you all placed on the back foot. Games with very simple combat systems can easily fall into a trap with their boss fights. Due to the low number of actions the player has access to and the speed of each of them, all of Silent Hill 2's 6 boss fights had to lean into a unique gimmick to keep things varied and interesting. Pyramid Head's first fight is a test of survival in a small arena that runs on an invisible clock that can be shortened by fighting him head on. In the hospital, the flesh lip scurries about the rafters like a cockroach, and you can keep track of it through the sound and shaking in the ceiling. When it drops down to attack you, it'll blow through the tiles and hang by an exposed arm that you can shoot. Shooting the arm will cause it to drop to the floor so you can jump it. The Abstract Daddy fight has you running down narrow hallways and then into big rooms to deal with a weirdly fast turtle demon.
I don't think you have any idea how fast I really am. Oh my god! I'm fast as fuck, boy.
Eddie continues the trend of deceptively fast boss fights, but he is unique for being the only shootout fight in the game, with an arena that takes place inside a meat freezer. There's racks of pigs that will revolve around the room to provide cover for you and to allow you to find Eddie through the cold fog. The Mandarin is kind of the weak link, being similar to the Flesh Lips, however it does have a different moveset and arena to mix things up. Then there's the Pyramid Head gank, which is actually one of the better gank fights I've ever played. Suck it, Ornstein and Smo. They also... that might get me in trouble. Oh, worth it. This time, instead of wielding the knockoff Buster Sword, they wield a spear that they can actually throw at you, which shakes things up. And finally, Maria's fight brings her up in a weird metal spider skeleton thing, I think, that is pretty dangerous in close range, and she also has a butterfly projectile that keeps you from just shooting her from range. The gimmicks of these boss fights and the simplicity of James's moveset get to shine given how they make for some pretty unique encounters, especially when compared to the rest of the game that really only has 4 enemy types. Bluer Team managed to make a set of systems that work really well in a 3D space to foster a constant butt-clenching atmosphere that I loved every second of. But that's only 1/3 of the experience. Silent Hill 2 isn't as combat-focused of a survival game as Resident Evil 4 or The Last of Us 2, nor is it as combat-focused as my gameplay or my breakdown would have you believe. From my limited experience with Resident Evil 4, they really only share base elements like the over-the-shoulder camera placement and the emphasis on scavenging for health supplies and bullets. In Silent Hill 2, scavenging is definitely an element of the game, and the combat is certainly an option, but it's an option that I took all too often because that's just how I like to play games. But Silent Hill 2 at its core is a linear survival puzzle game. The puzzles are front and center, and with the exception of one, I really loved them. Because of the dreamlike elements of Silent Hill, the puzzles are allowed to be as abstract and erratic as they want. I mean, what the hell kind of hospital has a key to the roof hidden behind a disembodied hand, 3 bracelets, and the alchemical gang signs? It's just a rooftop.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Why?
Okay, that's a valid reason, but still. The funny thing is that this is the exact puzzle I managed to accidentally brute force through the first half, and then I had to look up how to do it in the second half because I skipped the step. I'm not going to spoil the puzzles because they genuinely are the best part of the game, so I'll dance around them as best I can. All of the puzzles hold a thematic relevance to the area they belong to and can be interpreted in so many different ways because Silent Hill 2 isn't tethered to making sense in reality. The game gives you more than enough clues in the areas to solve the puzzles on your own through clever environmental design or a string of notes that piece together the answers. That said, there were definitely moments where I decided to look up how to progress. Barring one puzzle that's not an actual indictment of the quality of the game or its design, and is more so just me being dumb as a bag of bricks. The one puzzle in the game that I do believe to be poorly designed happens about 3 hours into the game, and it's mainly because of the over-the-shoulder camera angle. But in a game whose main gameplay draw is the puzzles, having only one stinker is pretty impressive. So, if you've probably figured it out by now, I'm a bit of a gameplay is king kind of guy. Which, depending on how you see it, could be a little hypocritical of me as a narrative designer and writer by trade. Generally, I'd say a game can have a lackluster story, serviceable graphics and art style, and okay voice acting if the gameplay is really solid. But as always, there's exceptions and outliers to that. For as amazing as the gameplay is, Silent Hill 2 Remake is definitely one of those outliers. Because of its nature as a psychological horror puzzle game, it really can't afford to slip up in any department. It needs to have an engaging story, expressive animations, compelling performances, and visually rich environments on top of having a satisfying gameplay loop to keep the player going forward. And I'm happy to say that not only did the remake keep its footing, but it excelled. Silent Hill 2 follows James Sunderland as he comes to the town, Silent Hill, after receiving a letter from his wife, Mary, dead these past 3 years from an unknown disease. Along his search, he meets others like him, making their own way through the town. The first is Angela, a survivor looking for her mom. The second is Eddie, a guy that's just kind of running away. The third is Laura, a little kid who honestly seems about as happy as can be despite all the crazy shit happening. And the final is Maria, a woman who I think was created here that somehow knows a lot about James, bears an almost uncanny resemblance to Mary, and who just kind of clings to James like a parasite while also flirting with him. James is a stronger man than me because I would have folded like a ham sandwich, man. The further James continues with his mission, the more the town of Silent Hill starts to fade away and is replaced with this other world. A hellscape that is attuned to the individual as they work through the trauma that led them to the town. Sometimes the hellscape is kind of nice, other times it makes my skin crawl. And sometimes these hellscapes intersect, and traces of them can be seen throughout the cutscenes in really cool ways, like how Eddie's breath can always be seen in almost every scene he's in. So after running away from 2 of his demons, blasting one of Angela's, just all of Eddie, attempting to kill a child for calling him a doo-doo head. Oh, wait, no. That was me. Anyway, James finally makes it to the end of his road where his carefully constructed lie comes crumbling down around him. Mary hasn't been dead for 3 years. She just died, and it wasn't from her disease. Mary was sick for 3 years, and the disease she had warped her so much that, to James, she was already dead. The disease also changed James from a genuinely kind and good-hearted person into an angry and bitter alcoholic who came to resent his wife for the years of his life that he felt she stole from him. So when he finally reached the end of his rope, he just snapped. James's revelation and acceptance of what happened to Mary leads to a showdown with the Pyramid Heads, the manifestations of his own guilt, where he defeats them and can now walk free-ish. See, Maria isn't ready to go, and tries one last time to lure James into her trap, but he quickly sees this for what it is, and the final boss fight ensues where James kills her. The story is pretty great on its own, and if you are interested in seeing a more comprehensive story analysis or breakdown of the themes and characters, please go check out these Silent Hill 2 videos from people who are much smarter than me and have much better video production. You'll find links to these videos in the description and in the pinned comment down below. Special thanks to Celtic Phoenix Productions and Eve Dragon Soul for giving me this curated, prime cut list of Silent Hill 2 content to share with y'all. Everyone, go check them out. Just, after you finish my video, please. Also, give Celtic's channel a look-see. He's cool, even though he laughed at my struggles during streams. So, the story is great, but part of what really takes the story from pretty great to amazing is the performances and animations that bring it to life. The facial and motion capture in this game is top of the line. There's so many little nuances in the way all the characters interact and react to things, and the expressiveness of the character models is incredible. They did a particularly good job with the eyes. There is so much pain hiding behind James's eyes in almost every scene and save point. Maria's eyes have this insatiable and desperate desire to them. Eddie's eyes have this kind of guilty and panicked dog look to them every time he's asked just a regular question. And Angela, Jesus, Angela, I have never seen just a more thoroughly defeated set of eyes in my life. The voice actors also hit this perfect medium between real human emotion and pauses and behavioral tics that border on the uncanny. This uncanny feeling is present in almost every scene of the game, be it a cutscene or an in-game dialogue. The conversations all have this weird flow to them, and at one point the characters will be talking like normal humans, but then something will happen that any normal human would pick up on and notice as weird or odd and make some sort of face or reaction to it, but here they all just kind of go with it, and it makes for this pretty haunting atmosphere. There's a line in the sand between normal human interaction and just plain weird interactions, and the game plays jump rope with that line. In one scene, Angela will be pretty calm and chill, if not a little guarded in the face of a stranger, and then in the next she'll be screaming bloody murder. Eddie will go from being just a normal dude who eats popcorn weirdly to frantically attempting to gaslight you. Laura will call you a big dumb poopy face, and then still call you a big dumb poopy face. And then Maria...
Oh!
Not at all, silly.
I knew she was alive!
Doesn't matter who I am.
Oh, she got them crazy eyes. Yeah, I'm still a little confused on this one. But as you get closer to the end and start to understand what is happening, these interactions start to make more sense, but they never lose that haunting feeling. As I said earlier, James is a pretty calm and collected character throughout the game, especially in comparison to the others. All of the gross and terrifying things happening around him barely faze him. Unless you chose to eat pizza.
This town's full of monsters. Who could just sit here and eat pizza?
It serves as a pretty good contrast to his appearance as well, as every time you look at this man's face, he looks like the laundry that I left half finished in the washing machine for a week. But there's cracks in his calm and collected manner that you can see from the second James gets the 2x4 to fight enemies. In the cutscenes, you can see it the instant Laura and Maria arrive in the story. With Laura, it's more the impatience and frustration that comes from dealing with a child than it is anything dark and dangerous. He still genuinely cares about Laura's safety, she just gets on his nerves. But with Maria, it's almost the complete opposite. James doesn't go out of his way to help her or talk to her like he does with the others. He actually gets really dismissive and flippant of Maria, and it only gets more intense the more she tries to latch onto him. And all of these scenes take place in some of the most disgusting environments I've ever seen. There's a strong distinction made between the real world and the overworld. Areas in the real world are littered with moldy trash and broken down furniture, and they always give off a cold feel to them from the constant blue-gray light, while James's other world is always an inverted and twisted version of those same settings. Bathed in a deep red light, it looks like a torture chamber, with rusted cells and chains draped around every broken wall and cracked ceiling. The other world at times can be more inviting than the real world, offering more open spaces to move around and brighter lighting. The further we get in the story, the more the aesthetics of the environments blend together, but the lighting always separates them. These delightfully disgusting and foreboding settings perfectly reflect the two states of James's mind. Something that is already messed up to begin with and is hiding something even worse down below the surface. This is an element further exemplified by the narrative design of the game. As a narrative designer myself, playing games isn't just a hobby or a pastime for me anymore. It still is, but it's also research. I get to see all the different ways my fellow colleagues are presenting their stories and learn from them. I've played a lot of games and DLC this year with phenomenal narrative design. Lies of P, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Shadows of the Erdtree, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Sifu, Helldivers 2, Celeste, and Hollow Knight, just to name a few. Each of them taught me something new about the ways a narrative could connect with the player, and because of that, I thought there was nothing more I could learn this year from my own research. Apologies for any mispronunciations. Barbara Kuick, who served as both a writer and the sole narrative designer for Silent Hill 2 Remake, deserves so much praise for how the narrative of this game turned out. This game has some of the coolest narrative design I've played through this year. The gameplay, performances, animations, and environments all lift the game high into the sky, but the narrative design is the foundation on which these all stand, and this foundation has some rock-solid cement. Narrative design is where game design meets storytelling. It's not so much writing and plotting as it is figuring out how the player encounters the story we want to tell. And Silent Hill 2 Remake takes a very hands-off approach to its narrative design. It doesn't tell you in any way what actions you take will affect the ending that you get, and these actions are not just limited to what you do in the game world. It takes into account how often you actually examine specific lore items you find, like Mary's letter, Angela's knife, and a handkerchief that you find in the Woodside apartments. Because of this, your understanding of the story is entirely dependent on how much you engage with these unseen elements. This approach is a risky one given that an unfortunate reality of narrative design and game writing in general is that a solid 75% of players may never see or read your work. However, when done effectively, this approach is one that actively enriches the narrative and reinforces the weight of the journey. Bloober Team achieved its success with Silent Hill 2 Remake through its use of conditioning. From the very first act of the game, you are conditioned that Silent Hill is a trippy place where anything can happen, and that the people you meet here and the places you go may or may not even be real. But, real or not, the dangers of the town can still kill you, so you are conditioned to scavenge for supplies at every chance you get in order to help you survive them. Through Eddie and Angela, you're conditioned that James will try to help out the people he meets on his journey, even if it takes him a little bit out of the way. Through the health system and abundance of healing items, you're conditioned to keep James in the healthiest condition possible. From the amazing feel of the combat and the enemy design, you're conditioned that fighting enemies and stomping on every one of their corpses to ensure they don't rise up again to torment you is necessary to survive. From the big areas and lack of enemies chasing you through them, you're conditioned to take as much time as you need to thoroughly explore every area of the levels before completing them. From the first few cutscenes and in-game dialogues with Maria, you're conditioned that James doesn't really care what she has to say and becomes much more focused on finding Mary when she's around, so you probably should just focus on the mission. Through this, you're also conditioned that interrupting Maria is no skin off your back, so when you hear her voice at the end of the game, you might just interrupt her final words. And finally, you're conditioned to interact with every note, poster, or painting you see because it may hold a clue to the puzzle you need to solve in order to progress to the next level. From the items you can't take with you, you are conditioned to trust what you see in text pop-ups because they've never steered you wrong before. So when you see that there's blanks in the text pop-ups, you don't realize that it's James's own shattered mind consciously blocking you both from seeing that he's guilty. For the items you can collect and look back to, you're conditioned to always look back to them whenever you need to solve a puzzle. So perhaps the knife Angela gave you holds some sort of clue to another puzzle, or maybe Mary's letter holds the clue you've been missing, or maybe there's something written on the back of the handkerchief. This use of contradicting conditioning in tandem with all the game's systems is masterful because of how much it affects the way you play and how well that playstyle you end up with jives with the ending you get. It puts you directly into the shoes of James and the traumatizing and conflicting journey he's subjected to. The more you take care of James and keep him away from the parasite trying to latch on to him, the better he will be in the long run. But if you take less care of James and spend too much time with Maria, you can end up with an ending that sees James in his worst possible nightmare. The complexity of the narrative design born from this very simple tool allows for the narrative to have layers upon layers that can only be seen on replay when you have become accustomed to the tricks of the game, but it also ensures that even on a first playthrough, you never get lost in the fog. Organizing all of this and putting it into a manner that is still clear as day for the player to navigate just makes my neurons light up like a Christmas tree, and the fact that one person is responsible for it is the star on top.
Restless dreams. I see that town.
Silent Hill 2 Remake is a game that I never thought I'd play, but I'm so glad that I did. It's a game that understands its genre and medium to a T. It knows exactly what threads to pull on to build tension, and exactly when to cut them and drop you into a whole new fresh hell. The way it tells its story with the advantage of modern technology is the most impressive I've seen all year. The performances all deliver this uncanny, detached feeling that constantly makes you question what is and isn't real, but you never question the emotion on display. The disgusting and horrific environments make your skin crawl in the best ways possible. The animations are all raw and visceral in a way that contrasts so harshly with the calm demeanor of James. The gameplay is simple and never gets in the way of the narrative, actively enhancing it with its simplicity. And the lore items are all expertly and richly crafted to flesh out this world while also delivering on a sense of dread and unease with every note, letter, and poster. All of these factors come together to deliver an experience that takes all the best parts of psychological horror and mashes them together with gameplay that makes this one of the most moving stories I've ever played through. And you know what? It makes me want to play the original, so I think I'm just going to go do that. I'll see y'all after the Game Awards where this game gets snubbed of Best Narrative. Peace. Hey y'all. Thanks for sticking it out through that video. I hope it was a good time for y'all, and I hope that you do check out those links that I put down below to some other videos on Silent Hill 2. They're pretty fun. Celtic has also done a live stream reaction video to Synthetic Man's. I don't know if I can call it a video, because, yeah, it is one, and he put it out, but at the same time, it's not very good. But anyway, thank you all for coming through here. I hope you guys give it a like, share, a comment, maybe a subscribe, who knows. And we'll also be finding out together if my last comment there ages well or poorly, because the Game Awards were probably last week or 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or a month ago, depending on whenever the hell I actually edit and finish this video. So, in the off chance that it's not done before the new year, that is my resolution, is to actually have a better process and I can get a video out once a month. Because I've promised some videos to you guys and I have not delivered. So, gotta get on that. Yeah, gotta get on that. But thank you all for coming. And I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening, or whatever we're doing in the future now from when this video comes out. Bye-bye.